What is up, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation? It has been a long time, and I apologize, but now we're back. These videos are going to be more consistent. We're going to start to get these things rolling as the weeks continue on for the Dallas Cowboys during this regular season. Obviously, we talked about the Dallas Cowboys sitting at 3-3 right now. A very disappointing season, I will say, because now, obviously, coming to the offseason, we're looking to maybe make some changes because we saw with Dan Quinn, the Dan Quinn-led defense, what happened and how it sputtered out in the postseason, that playoff game against the Green Bay Packers at home, just completely devastating because we're talking about a team that has so much high potential and high expectations, and again, they did not meet them. So going into the offseason, what are you looking to do? Make some changes on the defensive side of the ball, especially because sometimes it feels like you can have a right coach, maybe some of the right pieces, and obviously I'll give Dan Quinn a little bit of leeway because last year there were so many different moving pieces. We're talking about having to play a guy like Marquise Bell at linebacker, some of the injuries we dealt with, but you have to show improve on the field at the end of the day, and we did not get that done in the postseason. So what was going to happen? Some changes coming. Obviously, Mike McCarthy's always been in a hot seat. His name is up for grabs, but obviously you're talking about Jerry Jones. He has lots of love from Mike McCarthy up to this point at least, and he did not up to that point, I will say, excuse me. And obviously Mike McCarthy, the change was not made, and we're talking about obviously also Mike McCarthy is your offensive play caller, so you're going to have to make some changes with your play calling. Have to make some changes at the offensive coordinator position and the head coaching position with one hire or firing. So we are looking to maybe just go in a different direction, but obviously they chose on the defensive side of the ball, bringing in former defensive coordinator for the Cowboys in the early 2000s, Mike Zimmer. We're talking about a guy obviously who became the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. We're talking about a guy who's with the Cincinnati Bengals and has had some very good defenses in this league. And obviously coming to this season, I had high potential. I talked about it in some of the offseason videos that I had some expectations for maybe Mike Zimmer to simplify some of the things that we're doing on the defensive side of the ball, because you do have some pieces in a Micah Parsons. You're talking about a DeMarcus Lawrence. You're talking about some guys who we were looking to get back in a DeMarvion Overshown. You're talking about what you have on the outside, DaRon Bland, getting a Trayvon Diggs who missed last season. I guess potentially played that first couple games of the season, and then we lost him. So getting the Trayvon Diggs back, maybe getting some of these guys back to just their regular position, we're going to find some success, because one thing you know for sure, Mike Zimmer is going to demand, I guess you want to say demand perfection. He's going to demand hard play, and we've seen that at certain points. I mean, when it comes to just the playing type, but at the end of the day, the Cowboys have looked terrible. I'm going to say it just that simple and plain. The Cowboys defense has looked terrible. We're talking about a defense that's given up 40 points multiple times, including the last game against the Detroit Lions at home, losing 47-9. People are just not filling gaps. People are not playing physical enough, and people are not flying to the ball with the same intensity that we had expected. And what we saw a little bit during training camp and some of the preseason, you saw some pop. But now the regular season has began, and you start to see just some guys not getting the job done. And on top of that, to make matters worse, injuries. You're talking about losing a Micah Parsons, a DeMarcus Lawrence. You're talking about losing a guy like DaRon Bland, who you're hoping to get back at some point. You're talking about a guy, Trayvon Diggs, who has not looked like his former self, and that's going to take a little bit of time, because you're talking about returning from an ACL injury. That can take maybe mid-season, maybe a full season, until you start to actually feel like yourself, whether you're cutting, getting loose, and just being comfortable out there. Like I said, just doing things that from the physical aspect that you're asked to do from a quarterback position. Especially, you're always going to be able to tell more of a fall off when a guy has played up to an all-pro and Pro Bowl level consistently, which Trayvon Diggs has since entering the NFL. So the Cowboys have a lot to work on, but you do have some guys that I feel like you still should be able to hang your hat on. A DeMarvion Overshown. I want to see him get more opportunities more consistently. Is anybody perfect on this defense right now? No. But you do have a guy like Eric Kendricks, who at this point, he is one of the leaders of that defense. He's not a perfect player at this point, but again, I feel like we still have players that can get the job done. The biggest issue to me is our front four. We are not getting a push when it comes to stopping the run, and that is where teams are eating us alive. Especially what happens when you cannot stop the run. That opens up so much more for the opposing passing game, because now you don't really have to sit here and bog down to one thing. You keep a defense on its toes, and we're talking about a team that's already not, I'm gonna say, executing on the defensive side of the ball, such as the Dallas Cowboys right now. So that's gonna make matters worse for this team. And then let's not even go go to the other side of the ball, we're talking about offensively. We're talking about an offense for the Dallas Cowboys who has a Dak Prescott who is now the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. We're talking about a guy in CeeDee Lamb who's making about 32, 33 mil a year now at the receiver position, which I'm going to say right now, especially talking about CeeDee Lamb, he earned that money. He deserves it. But we are going to have to execute as a team. Mike McCarthy has dropped the ball when it comes to creativity, when it comes to playmaking, when it comes to just getting guys involved, and obviously just moving guys around. We're starting to look like that old stale defense, the old stale offense that, again, you saw lots of Packers fans in the last years, few years for Mike McCarthy in Green Bay complaining about his offense is just old. It looks prehistoric, and we're starting to see a little bit more of that because we do not have the pieces right now, the horses that are going to be able to dominate the other side of the ball of the opposing defenses and make it as easy as possible. So what are you going to have to do? Get creative, move pieces around, and show and prove that you can just, the same way I said for the Dallas Cowboys defense right now is playing on their heels, that you can also force the opposing defenses to play on their heels on the offensive side. We're talking about an offense right now for the Dallas Cowboys who has scored over 20 points just 2 times. That's in a 28-25 loss to the Baltimore Ravens at home, and that's, I believe, in the first game of the season, scoring 33 against the Cleveland Browns, who you now see are not really that good of a team at all themselves. So up to this point, the Cowboys have scored 20, and 17, 19, and then 9 points. This team is sitting at 3-3 for a reason. They have lots of flaws, and flaws sometimes that I feel like can be covered up with a little bit of creativity that we are not seeing from a Mike McCarthy, and that to me is one of the most, I guess I'm gonna say, the scariest things for this team, because one thing is for sure, unless you make a major trade, which we already seen, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, the criticism they're starting to take, and Jerry Jones, have you seen over the last couple of weeks, starting to bite back a little bit, whether it's talking about reporters. He's upset being asked tough questions about why didn't you go sign a guy like Derrick Henry, who you see is, again, talked about how he would have loved to play for the Cowboys, but he never got that call. You see him dominating with the Baltimore Ravens right now. A guy like, I guess you want to say, just the options that we're looking at, we're bringing back an Ezekiel Elliott, which I had no problem with just because of the history that he does have. Obviously, it can be one of those novelty signings, but at some point you have to find the dogs that are going to be able to get you through an entire season. Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, but especially Jerry Jones, because we know he signs off on everything. He has the final say on everything. He has dropped the ball, and us as Cowboys fans is obviously one of those things we're going to say disappointing, but we are used to it, and that's not even a good thing. We're used to seeing the failure because we already known. Jerry Jones, at some point, he's going to blame someone else. He's going to say guys are just not getting it done, or maybe that coach is just not doing what he expected him to do. When we as fans were able to see it coming from a mile away. Again, this running game was never going to be credible because you don't have that one guy that you can sit here and say you're going to hang your hat on. Obviously, the Cowboys had many opportunities in this past NFL draft, and they did not address the running back position whatsoever. The offensive line has obviously shown itself to need a whole lot of work because Zach Martin, as much as we love him, the all-pro player he has been throughout the tenure of his career, the Pro Bowl player, the future Hall of Famer, and it goes without saying. When you lose a guy like Tyron Smith and you're replacing him with a I'm going to say a rookie in Tyler Guyton out of the University of Oklahoma, and then you're going to say Zach Martin is not the former Zach Martin. Terrence Steele is not Terrence Steele, who we looked and we saw maybe from a couple years ago, and we thought maybe he could be one of those linchpins for years to come. He is not playing that well. I'm going to say Tyler Smith has been playing solid, but at the same time, when you're talking about an offensive line, as I say all the time, you're talking about 5 guys that need to play on a chain, and we have many flaws on the offensive line. That's not going to help the running game when you don't have that special guy back there in the backfield. Rico Dowdle, I believe, has a little over 200 yards rushing this year. That is not anything, I guess you want to say, fully blaming on him, because the Cowboys offense right now, you're talking about Mike McCarthy. It's like he doesn't really know where to play guys. We signed a guy like Dalvin Cook, and he has not even touched the field. You have a struggling running game. You should be trying to I guess you want to be, you should say right now, excuse me, you should be trying to experiment with whatever you can. If you're seeing that we're not getting it done with Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle as a whole from the running game, try something else. You already dropped the ball in the offseason. You already have pretty much let it be known you're not looking to potentially bring in anything from a trade market standpoint. So what are you doing? You need to kick every tire that you have on your team. This to me goes from the coaching staff, the front office, but all the time we're going to continue to say every single year, as long as Jerry Jones is running things, we know what to expect. The team is going to have to outperform the front office. And a lot of times you're going to have to outperform some of the coaching because we've already known when Jerry Jerry Jones loves a guy, he's going to hang on to him until the very last second when he just feels there's literally nothing left to get out of that. And we're talking about Mike McCarthy. If he's not going to make some changes, we're going to have to bring out some more creativity. The Cowboys are not going to go anywhere. The season will get worse, and we might as well start looking at the mock draft boards already. Because again, the Dallas Cowboys sitting at 3-3, it doesn't feel like a team that you're going to say potentially has the ability to get even better. Because one more thing we are seeing, the Washington Commanders. Now we obviously see rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. Very unfortunate the injury. Started dealing with an injury. But those teams, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles, whether you love them, whether you hate them, they are a team that is always somehow still going to be in the mix when it comes to the NFC East Championship towards the end of the season. So the Cowboys are going to have to correct this thing and correct it very fast, or else we're going to be looking like, just like I said, at these mock draft boards, because the New York Giants, that's a team that's going to fight a little bit. But we see they're at the bottom of the division right now, but this is going to be a dog fight because we're not that talented this year when it comes to everything overall. You still have some pieces, obviously, and a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who I believe has about 467 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns on the year, and this is with a struggling offensive passing game when it comes to consistency. CeeDee Lamb also himself, he's going to have, I'm sure he'll hold himself accountable a little bit because, again, there are some plays that I feel like he has kind of left on the field this year. This, and I just want to say in totality, as a product overall, it is just very disappointing. And the sad part is a lot of us saw it coming, but the front office, the coaching staff, they didn't, which is one of those things where you're asking as a fan, how much longer can we continue to support? Majority of us, we're the diehard fans. We've been here. We're going to stay here, regardless of who the ownership is. This is still something that's very disappointing to see, and hopefully we can kind of correct things because you do have a team who is also sitting right here at 3-4 in the San Francisco 49ers, losing a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who they just also gave a nice contract to at the wide receiver position to a torn ACL. So these are some teams that, again, we've had the history over the last few years when it comes to the postseason and the failures and the regular season of the Cowboys going against the 49ers. This is still a year that the Cowboys are going to have some potential to be able to get themselves back in the mix, but they have to fix it, and they have to fix it right now. As of right now, it's looking like Micah Parsons is still going to be questionable for this week, so I'm not really even sure what the timetable is on his injury. We're also looking at DeMarcus Lawrence, who's still going to miss some time. Deron Bland, who is not back in the lineup yet, and hoping to get back. I believe it's kind of been up in the air. He's been out there doing some groundwork, I believe, but I don't really know when he's expected to be back for sure. So this is going to be something the Cowboys have got to take advantage of, because one thing you're going to say right now, a team sitting right here again as a 3-4 San Francisco 49ers. This will be a Sunday night football game. This can go very well for the Cowboys, or it can go very bad very fast, because one thing you know, fans around the league, not even Cowboys fans, just NFL football fans, will be watching the Cowboys to see this disaster continue. So the Cowboys have got to correct it, because Brock Purdy sitting right here now, he has shown himself to be a very capable quarterback, and we can say all the pieces, the guys that he has around, the Deebo Samuels, the guy who I believe that can make some noise this Sunday night if the Cowboys are not careful, the guy Ricky Pearsall out of University of Florida. This is going to be a dog fight, and the Cowboys better come in there ready, or it's going to get ugly very fast, because I feel like the 49ers, even with their struggles and the 3-4 record they're sitting at with right now, you're talking about playing on the road. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be going against a team that has some heart. I don't see the 49ers coming in and laying down at all, and if the Cowboys are going to have to try to get themselves back in the mix of just being I guess you want to say a potential playoff team. I'm not rooting for a wild card position, but if the Cowboys can find themselves just in that mix, they're going to have to beat some of these teams who may find themselves in that same mix. And again, a 3-4 team, while you're sitting there as a 3-3 Dallas Cowboys football team, you're going to have to get rid of some of this waste around you, and you have to start with the San Francisco 49ers. This game will be Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a dogfight. The Cowboys better be ready for one, or we're going to come in here again on Monday and be very disappointed, very upset, and talking about what exactly do we have to look forward to going into next year. Because the mock drafts are going to start to ramp up. I don't care, we can talk about as early as it is. The Cowboys are not looking like a team that can correct this thing. But I'm not saying they can't. It's just something that is going to have to make a lot of major changes from the coaching staff especially. But especially when we're talking about offensively and defensively, the guys calling the plays, you're going to have to get your guys in better position. And one thing I'm going to give Mike Zimmer a little bit of, I guess I want to say a little bit of leeway is, when you're talking about the Cowboys, at some point, when it comes to that front four, that front seven, you're going to have to see dominance and physicality. Mike Zimmer can't go out there and force these guys to get a push. You're looking at our defensive tackles a lot of times. You're looking at our D ends getting pushed and blown off the ball. And even when Micah Parsons was out there, teams have somehow figured out how to get Micah Parsons out of plays. Because one thing, Micah Parsons every now and then he'll run himself out of plays because he is so athletic and he'll beat his man off the ball that fast. But sometimes you see teams as they start to employ over the last couple seasons, you'll just completely run towards a guy like Micah Parsons because now you're throwing bodies, or they'll just run away from him. And you can alleviate some of that when you know there are not many other dominant guys on that line as well. So like I said, the physicality for the Cowboys, that's the biggest thing that we're not seeing right now. We're seeing guys get blown off the ball. We're seeing your linebackers completely blocked into the second level so that the running backs are not even really being touched from the opposing teams until they're way downfield. And now when you're talking about asking defensive backs and just your linebackers to make every single play or that is going to be a big gain, you're asking for trouble. Again, on the offensive side of the ball, you have got to find more creativity. Our running game doesn't look like it's going to be one of the biggest factors of this team this year. So if you're going to be a Mike McCarthy offensive play caller, you're going to have to accept what you have, because one thing I can't stand from offensive play callers especially, guys that don't know how to adjust to what you see. I don't care what you came into the season wanting to do. At some point when you say, this is what we have, this is what we have to work with, we have got to now create a system that is going to fix and apply to what we can work with. And that's what I give Mike McCarthy a little bit of credit for last year. Going into the Los Angeles Chargers game, we were struggling a little bit, but he started to change around exactly what the offensive game plan was, and we start to see a little bit more success. We're going to have to do that this year. You're going to expect a lot of out of Dak Prescott, because again, I don't care whether it's fair, whether it's not fair. When you are now talking about being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, in NFL history, you're now looking at a guy and saying, sometimes you have to make plays that are not always 1,000% there. If they're halfway there, you have got to make the plays, because this team has many flaws that didn't get addressed. And the front office can try to blame it on the contracts of the high-paid players on this team. And at the end of the day, that's still going to be nonsense, because many teams around the league deal with some of these same issues, having to pay their top guys big money, and they somehow still find ways to play and dance around that. So Jerry Jones does not have that excuse. Stephen Jones does not have that excuse, and I'm not giving Mike McCarthy too many excuses himself when it comes to just creating something that we can work with. Find more motion for this offense. It's very stale, it's very just predictable, and we saw many times going back to the Jason Garrett era. That's some of the times we saw defensive coordinators, from other sides of the ball of other teams saying, this team looks very predictable. That's what I'm starting to see a lot more right now, and it's starting to make some of that noise Packers fans were saying look very reasonable and very credible. So Mike McCarthy, Mike Zimmer, I hope they have been in the lab trying to create something new, because 47-9 was the last defeat that you took to the Detroit Lions at home. You have nothing to be, I guess you have nothing just to leave out there at all, because this season, I guess you're going to pretty much say, you're playing on a fine line of failure or success, and we'll be able to see it fairly quickly. Maybe even this Sunday night against the San Francisco 49ers on the road, Sunday night football. So go ahead, get your popcorn ready, like Terrell Owens used to say, because this Cowboys team will be entertaining, whether good or bad for somebody, whether it's for us or whether it's for opposing fans, just fans around the league that want to see the Cowboys fail. It's going to be entertainment for somebody. So hopefully we're able to get the job done and correct this thing, straighten up some things, but we will always be here to talk about it. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. We will be here Monday to talk about what happened in this game against the San Francisco 49ers. Did the Cowboys get it done? Did they show some heart? Did they show some life that's left in this season? Or did they come out here and get smacked in the mouth? We'll be able to see, and we'll be able to talk about it fairly soon. So I appreciate you guys. Once again, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.